Hey everyone! Here is my Module 4 practice on my favorite STEM resources. So the first resource I chose was the movie Apollo 13, which I'm sure many of you have seen. If you haven't seen it, basically it's about one of the biggest NASA disasters that happened when a spacecraft something goes wrong with the spacecraft. So the film then looks at the technological issues with the flight and other technological issues concerning spacecrafts. So why would I recommend this? Well, first of all, I think it's a great movie to watch. It's enjoyable and it's also knowledgeable. You can really learn from it, but it can teach you so much about space and it allows you to think about what goes into space and spacecrafts. So I think it's really cool. Not only is it enjoyable, but you're learning from it. And it's something that you can then take and apply in other aspects of your life. How does this fit into my STEM identity? Well, I love science, and it's something that I feel I want to improve myself with and learn more about things and broaden my horizon in science. And for me, I think space is really exciting and it's interesting. So this movie allowed me to really think more deeply about space flights, even the future of space. What does that look like in the future? And the technology involved in spacecrafts and exploration. Especially since today NASA is no longer running, I think it's really important to keep these things in mind and how people will look at space in the future. So that was my first resource. It's something I would definitely check out. My second resource is a book called Jewels of Allah: The Untold Story of Women in Iran by Nina Ansari. And this book was awesome. Um, when I saw this assignment, this book was something I thought of right away. And basically, it traces stories of women in Iran. Nina Ansari is the author, and she describes the history of Iran and a lot to do with feminism. And one of the quotes that really stood out for me about the women's equality movement in the book was, I always feel that the movement is sort of a mosaic. Each one of us puts in a little stone, and then you get a great mosaic at the end. So that was something that really stood out to me, but you learned so much about different women in Iran and their stories and how they overcame a lot of difficulties. So why I'd recommend this book is, well, it was a book I couldn't put down, and I really think it broadens your worldly view. It allows you to empathize with others and put yourself in someone else's shoes and someone else's cultures, and think about what it must have been like for women in Iran at that time to try and develop their careers and do more than what they were supposed to do at that time. So I think it's a really empowering book. And then why it's important to my STEM identity is just because women in STEM careers, it has me thinking about how there's such a lack of women in these STEM careers. Today it's increasing. However, I think it's important to remember that women in Iran overcame very hard things and difficulties in their lives. And it's important for women to remember today that they can do anything they set their mind to and they can overcome these challenges as well. It's an empowering story, and I think it really empowers women, especially in today's day and age. I added the trailer. Obviously, you can't click on it, but I'll put it in my link if anybody wants to look at the trailer for the book. My third resource is a podcast called Big Picture Science. And again, I added the link, but I'll put that in my post. So, Big Picture Science is a 50-minute podcast and it connects science and technology with everyday things in a humorous way. So, one of my favorite podcasts was called Crater Good, and it's about going back to the moon to discover new things and learning new theories about the moon. And again, the speaker of this really does it in a funny way. So, it's interesting to listen to, it's very light. But I would definitely recommend this because you can learn about science while laughing. I mean, I like learning, but also I like when things are enjoyable and not boring. So this is another thing that I like. Oh, sorry, I forgot to take the other picture down. I just realized that. So it is educational, and it's light, and it makes you really think about different science topics. So there's a bunch of different topics. Like I said, there's one about the moon. There was different topics about how coffee connects to science. So a little bit of something for everybody in there. And how does that fit in with my STEM identity? Again, I really like science and I'm trying to broaden my views, so it makes me feel more comfortable with topics I don't know about. And it also makes science more relevant to my life. Like I said, one of the podcasts they talked about coffee and science, and I love drinking coffee. So to me, that's more interesting and more relevant than something else that I wouldn't be interested about. So it gets me thinking about how I can make science relevant to myself, but also to other people around me to cultivate that love. And lastly, my resource is called The Theory of Everything, and it's the movie. There is a book on this as well, but I've watched the movie, so they may be a little bit different. But in the movie, one of the most brilliant scientists of our time, Stephen Hawking, shows us his battle through ALS and his marriage, and he also shows us how he still fights when he's going through these really hard things. He still fights and he still really loves science and math. And he shows us how important those things are to him. So he speculates on all different topics in this movie, including black holes, politics, and his religious views. And he was actually critiqued as one of the most impressive scientists since Einstein. So hearing these things from him is really cool. Why you should watch the movie or read the book? Well, you can learn about the discoveries of Stephen Hawking. Like I said, he was one of the greatest scientists of our time, so it's really interesting to hear his perspective on things. And it makes you also think about how your work affects those around you. He talks a lot about some of his work, and in just a minute, you'll see one of the things that really connected to me, but how it's affecting the immediate people in your life. So my STEM identity, it included disabilities. He had ALS and he was struggling through this. I also have my degree in special education, so that's something that's really important to me. And this movie really shows how even if you have a disability, that does not limit you to learn. And it opened my eyes to things I didn't think about before. They talked about making one of the first speech synthesizers for him when he had to get trached and he lost his voice. So stuff like that, that again, it relates back to my discipline, having a special education background, and also just having students with disabilities, um, and making it really interesting for me. So another really great resource, and I hope that you guys can check it out. Thanks.